Welcome to MacroCode. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. So today we are going to learn how to create a simple REST API using SpringBoot. So SpringBoot is an open source Java-based framework used to actually Spring Boot microservices, or you can actually use it to create a REST API. So we are going to see how we can create a simple REST API using a SpringBoot. Spring Initializr helps us to reduce the boilerplate code that you should be able to actually write. So as you can see on my screen, we are going to use Maven. Then, so the project you are going to create for Maven, then the language you are going to use Java. I'm going to stick with Java 3.0. Then for my case, I can rename this to macrocode. Then artifact, I can call it tutorial. Then the demo project, so you can actually give the description. Then my package name will be com.macrocode.tutorial. Then the packaging, I'm going to use the jar file. Then I'm going to stick with Java 17. So the next thing that we are going to do is actually to add dependencies. As you can see on my screen, we are going to click the add dependencies button. Then we are going to add a list of dependencies. So these dependencies are actually some of the things that our project needs. And you can see there is a lot of dependencies on our that are actually available. So you can see you have the Lombok Spring Web. So the first dependency that we are going to use is the Spring Web, which is used to build web, including RESTful applications using Spring MVC. So we actually need this. So if you click it, you'll be able to see that it has been added on our list of dependencies. So if we click again, add, so the next dependency that we need to add is in case you want to connect this to database, then we have the Spring Data JPA. So you'll be able to do a video about Spring Data JPA. So this is actually helps us to store to connect the and actually communicate with our database. Then we have if you want to do the in-memory database, then we have the H2 database. Then we also have, if you want to do MS SQL, we have the MS SQL Server driver, we have MySQL driver, we have Oracle, and we have PostgreSQL. We can also do MariaDB. So we have a lot of dependencies. For that, the next thing that we need to do is to actually generate. So we can generate the code. So if you do that, you can see it has downloaded a simple project. So we'll navigate to the project. So let me just move this. So this is our project. So we'll try to extract. Then we are going to use IntelliJ. So I'm using IntelliJ to actually so I'm using IntelliJ IDE. So you can download these and actually use it. So I'll open my project. So I'll open my project that I've downloaded under the download section. So I'll come to downloads, then I'll find my project here. So if I open it, so my project has opened and you can see it has actually built. So everything is fine. So you can see we have the source folder. We have the pom.xaml file. So under the source folder, if you click it, we have two folders. That is the main folder and the test folder. So the test folder holds all the test code that we will be going to write for our API. While the main folder, you can see we have the Java folder and the resources folder. So the Java folder will be holding now our real code that we are going to write for our REST API. Then under resources folder, you can see it holds the static. We use this when creating a web application, and we also have the application.properties. So the application.properties is actually a file that we are going to use to configure properties for our REST API. So for all the properties and the settings, that is where we are going to do them. Then under the pom.xaml, we are going to see all the dependencies that we added. So as you can see, we have the parent dependency. So this is the parent. You can see we have the SpringBoot starter parent. Then we have our group com.macrocode, then our artifact name and the version, then our name, then we have the description, then the Java version that we chose, which is 17. Then we have the dependencies. You can see we have the dependencies. So the Spring Boot starter web, and we have the Spring Boot starter test. So this is actually was added for our test measurement for testing. So if we added as many dependencies on our project, then we will have seen them on the under this section. So you'll have seen them here. So we can come to tutorial application. As you can see on tutorial application, so we can run this application using 3 ways. You can click on this icon, or you can click on this one, or you can actually right click on this file, then you can run the application. So if you try to run the application, it will try to run. If everything is fine, then our application will actually run. But in case there is something, so you can see the application failed to start. The reason being the web server failed to start. Port 8080 was already in use. So by default, Spring Boot actually tries to listen port 8080 if you try to run it. So what we need to do is so as you can see, port 8080 is already in use. So what we need to do, come to properties, under resources, come to application.properties. Then here we need to type something called server.port. Then we give it our port 2020. So if we try to run this again, we should expect our API to start and run. So you can see Tomcat start on ports 2020. So if you open our browser, then we type in local, then port 2020. Then you can see everything is working fine. White label error page, and you can see we have the status 4.4. So the next thing that we need to do, if you come to tutorial application, so if you come to tutorial application, so we need to annotate here. So you can annotate here with the REST controller. So this will tell our application to serve. We have some REST and we have some endpoints that are being defined here. So we can do public, then a string, then you can say hello, then we can return an empty string. So you can say please subscribe. So if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. So we can do that, and here we can annotate it with @get mapping. Then we can do, so you can say, you can do that. So if we do this and we try to run our application again, we are going to get please subscribe message on our browser. So the port is still the same. So if we refresh our page, you can see it is saying please subscribe. So we can also try to return a list. So we can try to return a list of strings. So if we do this, then we can do alt enter. So you can see this is it is expecting a list. So what we need to do, we'll say list of then we need a list of strings. So we can say please to be one of the string, then subscribe to be another string. So you can see everything is fine. So if we try to run our application again, so we'll be having a list of strings. So if we refresh, you can see we have an array of strings. So we have an array of strings. So that is how you create a simple REST. So assuming we want to give it a name. So we are using the tutorial application, but we can try to make this a bit cleaner. So we can create a package. Let's call it employees. So under employees, we can create a controller called by the government to amend the law. We can create a controller called employee controller that will be having all the employees logic. So what we can do, we can actually carry this. We can cut that, paste it here. Then we can remove the address controller from our tutorial application. Then under employees, we can now annotate it with REST controller. So then here we can say get subscriptions. So that is our method. So if we try to run this, so this is the only get method. So application is running. So if we refresh our page, we don't expect it to work. So something is, yeah, I think it will work because this is the only get method. So you can see it is actually working. So so it is actually working. So the next thing that we can do, we can actually try to make this as a we can do get mapping. Then we can say path. So the path can have the we can say path is equals to API get version 1, then employees. So you can see it is actually giving us a list of strings. So it is actually giving us a list of strings. So what we can do also, we can create a class of employees. You can say employee. So here we can create some fields. You can say private, then ID, you can say long ID, private. So you can do that. You can also say private, then string. You can have name of the employee. You can do private, then you can say string, email, and also do private, then you can have date of birth, So date of birth will be long date, local date, you can say local date, then you can say date of birth, then you can say private, you can say integer, then you can have as age. So we're going to use, instead of having the string, we want to replace this with a list of employees. So the next thing that we need to do is to create a constructor. So we can just right click, then say constructor, then select none. So we'll create an empty constructor. Then we can also create another constructor. Then we can select all. So you can select all of them. Okay. So this is our next constructor. It had everything. Then we can also create another constructor without the ID, if that will be generated by, in case you're connecting it to the database. So you can only connect that. So you can see we have now a constructor without the ID. So the next thing that you need to do is to create now the getters and setters. So generate, then getter and setters, then select all of them. There we are. We have generated the getters and setters. Then the next thing is to generate the toString. So toString. Okay. So you can see we have toString. So this is our employee model. So we have created this model. So we can actually replace the model, and we can say this to be get employees. Then we can have this as employee. Then we can return the list of, can actually return the list of employees here. Then we can define, we say new employee. Then inside here we need to pass the values. So we'll say 1, so that is a long. We use I. Then the name of the employee, can say James code. Then the next thing is the email. So you can say test at, so you can call this test at gmail.com. Then the next thing is the date of birth. You can say local date. Then you can say off. Then you can have the year. So you can say 2022, 2023. Then the month, say the month of August. Then date 20. Then the next thing is the age. So you can say 27. So, but you can actually subtract the age from this one. So the next thing is, so we should actually do this. So, so you can see we now have this. So if we try to run this application, we should be able to get the list of employees. So application is running. If we refresh this, you can see we have the ID is 1, name, James code, email, test email, date of birth. So we can actually do that. So we can actually retrieve a list of employees. So another thing is we have done this. So we have been able to create a simple REST API. So you can see we can get a list of ID, name, James. So assuming we want to do dependency injection. So what we need to do, we need to create a service here. So we can create another, can call this employee service. So this employee service, we can actually do this. We can actually remove, we can actually get away with this one, then here we can have this. So this one will give us a list. So so our service will give us a list of employees. So under controller, we can get rid of this one. So what we need to do, we need to create public final, then employee service, then we can call it employee service. So we need to create here a constructor. So we can generate a constructor with the employee service. So you can see we have a constructor with the employee service. So to tell this that this is we are trying to achieve a dependency injection, then we are going to use another annotation called auto-wired. Then on our employee service, to get this to be detected, we are going to use at annotation called at service. So you can use this here. So you can call it at service. So we use that annotation. So on our controller, so we are going to say return employee, then dot get all employees. So you can see we have tried to apply dependency injection. So we have our employee service, we have injected it here. Then we are using employee service dot get employees, and our service returns a list of employees. You can see the get employees gives us a list of employees, and we have actually used it. So if we try to run this again, it should give us the same results. So if we go to application and refresh, you can see it is still giving us the same results. So that is a simple REST API using Spring Boot. So we are going to advance more on Spring Boot using this example when creating the next series, and we are going to connect this with our database. So please consider subscribing and watching our previous videos. See you in our next video. Bye.